research specialty is American literature, and as an American literature scholar, African American literature has been a central part of my research. And even if my research isn't specifically focusing on that, the African American experience in the United States always informs American literature in one way or the other. About 20 minutes ago, I just finished a lecture on the narrative of Frederick Douglass for our IDS class. And so it's a natural transition to discuss Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois and their perspectives, their rather different perspectives, on the role of the African American scholar and the role of individuals in achieving within their culture, within the larger culture, and their responsibilities or lack of responsibilities to anybody else. As a boy of 10 or 12, Frederick Douglass used his intelligence and resourcefulness to learn how to write, a skill unlawful for someone in his position as a slave. In 1834, he began, quote, "the work of instructing my dear fellow slaves, which was the sweetest engagement with which I was ever blessed." He called this work the delight of my soul to be doing something that looked like bettering the condition of my race. This essential question, what is the role of the person who has achieved something important and valuable to his or her race, was to have profound implications in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, especially as expressed by African American scholars Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Washington, the founder and leader of the Tuskegee Institute, rose from being a slave and working in salt and coal mines to graduating with honors from Hampton Institute in Virginia. His experience led him to the belief that the road to equality and success was in education that focused on the practical knowledge that helped one to make a living. In short, his philosophy argues that one should hoist one up by one's bootstraps, an ideology he shared with Andrew Carnegie. W.E.B. Du Bois, on the other hand, was born a free man, and his experience led to a slightly different understanding of how African Americans might achieve prosperity and equality. In 1903, some 40 years after emancipation, he wrote in an essay entitled "The Talented Tenth," that central to the work of gaining equality is the education of the best and brightest African Americans. Quote, "The best and most capable of their youth must be schooled in the colleges and universities of the land. We will not quarrel as to just what the University of the Negro should teach or how it should teach it. I willingly admit that each soul and each race soul needs its own peculiar curriculum. But this is true. A university is a human invention for the transmission of knowledge and culture from generation to generation through the training of quick minds and pure hearts. And for this work, no other human invention will suffice, not even trade or industrial schools." And in that last section, you can see him quarreling a little bit with Washington, who says, go learn a trade, bring yourself up, and Du Bois saying, go to the universities, learn stuff, and then help others up. These figures, Du Bois says, illustrate vividly the function of the college-bred Negro. He is, as he ought to be, the group leader, the man who sets the ideals of the community where he lives, directs its thoughts, and heads its social movements. We must translate Du Bois a bit for our own century, for few argue with the need for any citizen to become college educated. However, Du Bois asserts that it is incumbent upon college-educated African Americans to lend a hand up to those still struggling to find equality and prosperity, while Washington asserts that it is the individual's responsibility to avail himself of training and lift himself up. My point in identifying both of these perspectives is not to privilege either one, but to identify two different ways that our society, and as I mentioned, Washington's perspective is the same as Carnegie's, that our society suggests we attain prosperity, parity, equality, etc. And our job here, and the job of our panel, is to try to deal with some of these questions. Is there today an obligation for educated African Americans, and we can ask the same about any particular group, working class whites, Latinos, Asians, women, any particular group we want to name. Is it an obligation for that particular group to keep going with their education, to honor their family and ethnicity, to help others up, even with the increasing risk that in some cases, in doing so, they may risk losing or diluting their essential heritage? On the other hand, does anyone have an obligation to reach down and help those reaching up, to raise up his own heritage? Does anybody have an obligation to anybody but themselves? And is it instead the obligation of each individual to take the responsibility of availing his or herself the opportunities available in education and financial advancement? Or is the mission for 2010 and beyond some combination of these two things? This is what our panel will discuss.